Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lauren and today I'm going to be talking about how you can help spirits move on. Now, I am a psychic, I'm also a medium, and a medium means you can talk to people that have passed on. I learned this skill, I learned how to do it, and one of the things that I come across often because I'm speaking to people that have passed is finding spirits that are not quite crossed over. And I'll talk about that term in a little bit, but you'll often find that these spirits don't know that they're dead, or maybe they're stuck in the past or just stuck where they're at currently. And because of that, they don't feel like they've moved forward. And sometimes they're asking for help or they are not sure where they're at. And so this is a question that I get from you guys every now and then is like, how can I help them move forward? Now, the assumption here is that you have to help them cross over. Now, I just want to stop you guys here and let you know that you are not responsible for helping anyone cross over. You have the ultimate decision on whether or not you want to entertain that energy or not. And oftentimes I find that the spirits who have not crossed on as well, they're usually not the lightest, highest vibration, or just they don't have good energy. And so just because they're stuck does not mean at all that you have to help them. I want that to be a huge takeaway, because I think a lot of us, especially those of you who are empaths, you have this like feeling that, oh, well, I hear them, they're coming to me, I'm responsible for them. And I want to let you know you are not. You can tell them to go away, you can tell them to leave you alone, you can tell them to find someone else, you can tell them to figure it out for themselves. You are not responsible. And if you take anything away from this video, please take that away, because I want you guys to understand that you have control over your energy and your time. And if you start to get into a zone where all the spirits know, okay, Lauren's the chick to see, and they all start coming in, then you're starting to get inundated and you become like that person. And I just want you guys to understand you can have boundaries with other people and spirits. But if you do want to help and you are a medium and you're doing parties or you're doing events and you're coming across spirits and you do want to help them move on, I'm going to give you guys a bunch of techniques in this video of what you can do. Remember to subscribe, especially if you want to see more psychic development tips and tricks as well as mediumship videos. First, I want to kind of dispel a myth that I see around spirits that have crossed over. And this term is used, and the assumption is that this spirit has not fully moved on to heaven. They are stuck in between. And I will say that what I'm about to say is my personal opinion. I have been a medium now for probably 7 years. And in all of that time, I've done a lot of readings and a lot of mediumship readings where I connect with people that have crossed over. And my personal belief, so this is my personal belief, this is not fact, so just know that that inhibits like my bias, but my personal belief is that there's not a hard line here. There's not a hard line where a spirit just like crosses over and they're on the other side and they're better. It's not like a wall or like a barrier and they've stepped through it and now they're all good and fancy. In the reading where I sort of made my discovery on this was with my cousin, and I'll link that video up above. But basically how I see it is I see it as a lightning of energy. I see it as, it's so hard to describe. It's almost like they have one foot in one world and the other foot in the other world, and they're just kind of in between. And it's like they're aware of this world a little bit more, and that other world is there, it's accessible to them, but because they're so stuck in something that they have to say or get across, or you know, they're just ruminating on, they have a harder time seeing that they can move on. Again, it's all accessible to them. Like, I don't see this as a heaven and hell where like somebody has to allow them entry. It's more just like, what is their awareness? And so I see it as, you know, once they get their messages across, which not every spirit does this. Some just kind of move on and they're happy to move on. But like people who have passed traumatically or who have, you know, things that they want to share with their family, sometimes they'll get stuck. And they'll stick around and they'll concentrate on the things they want to communicate so much that they forget to move forward. And so as they do so, or, you know, and they don't have to deliver those messages, maybe they just let them go, it almost becomes like their energy is lighter. It's less burdened. And so when I see this, I kind of have symbols for this. Like when some spirits are not as crossed over, I feel like I can see their whole energy a lot better. Like they're very more earthbound is like the word I use. I feel like that's not the best word to use, but it's like I can see them. They feel like they're a person right here in the room with me. Now, if an energy is more crossed over, more enlightened, more evolved, more, again, unburdened, I feel like they're further away. I feel like they're up above. I feel like they're kind of like shouting at me from a distance. Now, again, those are my symbols. Your guides can communicate to you through different symbols. So watch that video if you're kind of wondering what that is about, but just know if you don't see it that way, there's nothing wrong. That's just how my guides communicate to me. So I really see it as more of a lightening of energy. Sometimes the less crossed they are, the denser they are, and then the more crossed they are, you know, the lighter that they feel. They have less energy to them. And if you read auras too, sometimes you can sense the aura, and maybe, you know, somebody who's not as crossed might have a grayer, darker aura versus somebody who might have a lighter, whiter, gold aura. But here is what I found interesting with my cousin's story. I believe that they can go back and forth. I do think that there is a spot where they have let go of everything and they can't really go backwards. They can really only move forward until they like reincarnate if they choose to. I sort of believe different things about reincarnation, but this is not a video about my beliefs. And so I think that they can go back. They can start to move forward, start to release this life. But then sometimes they might get caught up in something. They might get caught up in what other people think of them. They might get caught up in an old story, in a message that they need to deliver. So I do think that when people pass right away, sometimes it can be this back and forward movement of sometimes needing to let things go. I do sense sometimes that they're just like unavailable, like they're off somewhere else. I can't see them, hear them, and they've got their own matters to attend to. So sometimes they're not even as reachable. And sometimes this is why I say, hey, wait a week or a month or something before you even see a psychic to speak with somebody, because I see it as like they're getting their affairs in order. They're trying to figure out what they're doing and they don't have time to necessarily talk to us. And that is not always the case though. I have had spirits who immediately were just like right there, right next to you, communicating. 100% fine. So again, remember that this is my beliefs and this is how I see it, and things evolve as I do more readings. But I just want to let you guys know that crossed over is not a hard definition for me. It is not a, oh, I'm crossed over, now I'm all good. But I do think, again, there is that point where it's like, okay, I've figured out all the things that I needed to figure out about that life. I'm done with it. I'm going to either not come back, or I'm gonna, you know, focus on the next time that I'm gonna come around, or I'm just gonna hang out and do some fun things wherever they are. I don't know. Now, as a rule of thumb with all of these techniques that I'm going to give to you, they do not have to cross. They have to go of their own free will. You cannot force them to move forward, to step into the light, to unburden themselves if they don't want to. Just like you, they have free will. So know that there's no forcing of this. These are all techniques that are basically saying, hey, if you want to, I'm creating the space for you to do this. But at the end of the day, it's up to them to make that choice. This is again why I say, you know, it is totally okay if you do not help these spirits cross over, because sometimes they might not be ready. You are not responsible for that. Another thing that I learned from the shamanic courses that I took is that we shouldn't ever shame these people. We shouldn't ever, you know, shame these spirits for not crossing over soon enough, or not saying this, or, you know, doing things in the past life. That just creates mistrust, especially if you don't know these spirits. And we want to create a safe space where they trust us so that they can move on. And one thing I want you guys to make sure you are doing is protecting yourself, especially if you have not been taking any sort of mediumship courses. I don't think you should be doing this or communicating with spirits at all if you have not learned about mediumship, which I eventually want to have a course on. I'm just getting around to it, but make sure that you are setting your boundaries. Make sure you go through my basic protection video and make sure that you know who you're talking to, your boundaries are set, and you're protecting yourself before and after you do any of these exercises, especially with spirits that are not crossed over, because they can be more negative. They can hang out and they can keep talking to you and they can make you feel like you have to get that message across. And that's one thing that I often see with people is sometimes they'll be like, oh my gosh, I got a message from this guy and he wants me to reach out to his son, which lives all the way across the state. It's like, no, you can tell that spirit, absolutely not. I am not your messenger. You can figure it out in your own way, or you can let it go. But again, you want to make sure that you're protected so that you don't have spirits following you around. Now, the first technique that you can use is basically sending love and light to a spirit by yourself. So one of the ways that I like to simply do this is to create a beam of light in the center of a room. And so if I'm by myself, I will just kind of sit, meditate for a while. If you need to listen to some music, go ahead and do so. And then you just imagine this beam of light, maybe out in front of you. If it helps, you could have a candle in the center of the room so that you can imagine that the light is coming from the candle. And you want to send it up. And this doesn't necessarily mean you believe in heaven, or if you do, awesome, it connects to heaven. But this is just a visualization that we are moving up, that we are lightening the energy. And then what you can do is simply just connect to that spirit. And you don't have to feel them. You don't have to be able to see them, especially if this is like one of your own loved ones and you're worried about them. You're worried that maybe they're not crossed over. You can call out their name 3 times. You can say out loud, hey, I'm talking to so-and-so. You can visualize them in your mind's eye, and you can just call them in. And again, even if you can't feel them, that doesn't mean they aren't there. That just might mean that your psychic abilities and your psychic clairs are not as honed, but they will hear you. You're setting the intention, this is who I want to talk to, and they will hear you even if you can't hear or see them. And then all you have to do basically is just tell them to step in the light, invite them to step in the light. Say, hey, this is here. You are, if you want to move forward, if you want to move on, if you want to go to the next place, it is here for you to do so. Now, if you already feel like, hey, maybe they are crossed over, but they could just have some good energy, what you could do instead is just visualize them and then just visualize this bubble of white light around them. And this is something you can also do, especially if your loved one maybe hasn't passed yet and they're kind of in between, like maybe they're in a coma, maybe they're kind of on life support or something like that. This is something, again, that I learned in the shamanic courses that I took. You can imagine white light around them, and this is just called holding space. And you're basically saying, hey, you're protected, hey, you're safe, I'm here for you. But again, with that beam of light, what you can do is simply just invite them to step in and say, this will take you to the next place. Obviously it's not you controlling this, and this light is there for them to step into at any time. But sometimes having somebody else direct them can help them get undistracted by whatever they're being distracted by, whether it's the message they want to give, whether it's this. And sometimes what I tell them is like, hey, if you step into the light, you're going to be able to communicate with us a lot easier. I'm getting like chills the whole time that I'm recording this video. I feel like my guides are like, yes, say that. Anyway, what was I saying? And if you're using your psychic abilities and your mediumship skills, you might be able to sense like what's bothering them, and you can help them work it out. Like sometimes they'll feel like, they're afraid of moving on to that next step because they don't know what's on the other side. They're afraid they're going to get judged. I had a spirit, one time say that. They were so religious in this life, they were afraid to move on because of the bad things that they did in this life. Sometimes they are worried that they won't be able to come back, and so that's why they don't move forward. Again, I've talked about how sometimes they're reliving their death or their trauma, or maybe they want to communicate a message. And usually what you want to do is act as a counselor and just say, hey, I hear you, this will help, it's here if you want it, you don't have to. But just hearing them out, but, having a line of, where your boundaries are at. You're not here to facilitate a message necessarily. You're not here to really try to help them with all of their problems. That is something that they need to deal with, not you. Obviously, if you have a client in front of you and you're doing this with them, it's a little different. You can pass on those messages and maybe it will help them feel better. But for example, I had a woman in this house when I first moved in, and I don't know her family. I don't know where they live. I'm not going to pass on those messages. I told her she can deal with it. Hey, you're gone, you're dead. You can move forward, and then maybe you can come back and talk to your loved ones, and it'll be a lot easier to communicate with them or something like that. So you don't need anything special to do this yourself. You can have a candle, but all you really want is a visualization or meditation. Create this light, create a safe space, put this light around them, whatever it is, and just invite them to move forward, invite them to move towards the light, whatever feels most comfortable to you. Now, my absolute favorite way to help spirits move on is to do it in a group. And I think that the combined energy of everyone helping out, I think just calls the spirit in more, makes them feel even more confident. And it helps you connect, and then you can kind of like compare notes with whatever anyone else was picking up afterwards. And so here's a video that I did where I went into somebody's house to try to sense the energy. And I wasn't expecting to come across like a spirit that needed help moving on, but we went ahead and did that, the three of us, and I just led everyone through a brief meditation, basically just doing what I told you guys now, like visualize this light. And I just made it up as I went. And you can do this, like you don't need to have like a full script memorized or have it written out. You just want to get everyone in a meditative state, and then imagine a beam of light, and then invite that spirit to move in. And the thing is when you have several people all setting that same intention, the energy is just heightened. It makes it stronger. It makes it more reliable. And I think after this video, I think I sensed that there was one spirit that moved on. And then I don't think that the other one necessarily wanted to move on. And so in both of these cases, whether you're doing it yourself or you're doing it with a group of people, what you can do is leave the beam of light there. It's not going to hurt anybody. It's just a beam of white light. So you can say, hey, we're going to leave this white light here for the rest of the night. And if you still want to come, because maybe they're shy, maybe they want to do it in their own time, then they might step into it later in the night or later in the day. And just to give you an example of this, the lady that I was talking about that used to be in my house, how I helped her move on was actually through a group class. Like I went to a class and a few people actually in the group sensed her energy around me. And I was like, that's crazy. I'm pretty sure it's this lady that used to live in the house that I'm currently in, which if you've watched my videos on like how spirits can like stick to certain places or people or things, you can understand like why she was following me around. But the whole class sort of sensed her energy, and that night was all about just talking to spirits in general. And I think we did something similar where we invited anybody that needed to step into the light at the end of the night to do so. And I remember visualizing her kind of stepping into the light. And then on the other side of it, she came out just looking totally different. And I shouldn't say on the other side of it, really, it was just like she was gone. And then later when I tuned into her energy, she was much more lightened. She was like a younger version of herself. She was wearing different clothes. It was like the person that she wanted to be seen as. And so that group energy helped, because then it was like afterwards we were able to confirm like what we felt around it. And the fact that I had a few other people like confirm the things that I was getting was really validating and super helpful. So you can look for like spirit circles in your area. Seances is what they're called. I feel like you'll see a lot of these around Halloween, but I know here in Colorado, like there's some groups that meet on a monthly basis to do mediumship circles and pass along information. If you don't have this, go out and start one. I'll give another example of like where this didn't necessarily happen, how you would expect it to. And that was, I was taking a shamanic death and dying course, and we were supposed to come to class with like a spirit that we thought maybe wasn't fully crossed over. And so my friend's father had just committed suicide, and so I thought, well, maybe he would want to cross over. And I think we all shared a bit about each of the people that we brought to the class, and then we all did kind of like a group journey together to see if they would help move on. And then afterwards, it was so cool because the teacher basically said, okay, let's go through this list. did anybody feel like that person might have left? And the person that I brought was definitely not ready to move on. They really wanted to communicate whatever messages that they wanted to communicate before leaving. So not all the time will they move on. It's totally not up to you. They absolutely have that free will. Now, the third way that I've learned of how to help spirits cross over is something, I don't know how easily you all could do this, because you really need a shaman to lead this, and a shaman who knows this specific exercise. But I wanted to tell you about it anyway, in case you do find somebody. And this was actually created by the Pomo tribe in California. And this group literally formed a shape of a boat with their bodies. And some people in the boat pretend to row, and some people use like drums or shakers, which is pretty common in shamanic journeys. And basically, you guys visualize all together going to, leaving a shore, going across the water, and basically at some point in the water, you're letting go of these spirits. And so basically you're saying, hey, if you want to move on, board our boat is going to take you to the next world. And this is something that they believed in back then. And I did this, and I'm just getting chills thinking about it, because it was really awkward at first, because you're like, all right, we're gonna sit in the middle of this room and just fake row. But after you got into it, you could sort of feel this group energy. And it really, there's something about being in a group that just helps sometimes to feel each other's energy and to basically create something stronger. And I remember feeling like some of those people that we brought at the beginning of class jumped on, and just visualizing and rowing the boat and letting them jump off when they needed to. Not jump off as much as like, I'm having a hard time remembering, and I didn't take notes on it. But I think there was like a light that we reached, or I don't know if it was another shore, I can't remember. But there was a point in which they could leave if they so choose. And then we rowed back, I believe. So again, that one's kind of hard to do if you don't know somebody who knows that exact ritual, but I think it's important to share, because basically all of these are visualizations. You're visualizing and you're holding space. That's really all it is. And you're holding a space of bright white energy, and you're facilitating a safe place for them to move from one place to the next. Or maybe they'll just sit in your energy that you've created and feel a little bit better. And maybe that's all they need. Now, I do want to talk about people that have yet to cross. So sometimes you'll be in a situation, again, like someone's in a coma, maybe someone is on life support, you know they're nearing the end, and this happens a lot. And one of the things that you can do is hold space for that person. And so maybe you don't even have to be with them, you can be in another place, but you want to, again, imagine them, call in their energy, or even if you're there, kind of tune into their energy and create this bubble of bright white light. And my teacher that taught this told us that you could talk to them even if they can't hear you and say, hey, you know, whenever you're ready to move on, you can. I feel like this gets into weird ethics, because you don't want to encourage it if they're not ready, but sometimes you just know. And maybe if they're struggling to pass and they're trying to like hold on, sometimes letting them know that they can release that energy and move forward is actually all that they need. And so you can imagine this bright white light around them. You can even like visualize a door and say, hey, I'm making a door for you. This is a safe spot. If you want to walk through this door and move on to the other side, it's there for your taking. So same thing, can't force it. I'm just remembering too that you can also do this with a pet, but it's essentially the same thing, holding space, providing white light, providing a place for them to move from one place to the next. Again, knowing that they might not take that opportunity, but it's more about giving yourself a purpose, making you feel like you're doing something for them that's positive. I've honestly yet to do this for anybody. I've always wanted to be able to do this, but I've heard stories of it working really well. I just don't feel like I'm allowed to share them necessarily. But if you're really interested in this, I would highly recommend checking out some shamanic work, because it teaches a lot about that and facilitating that. You can even go into a shamanic journey or a meditation to connect with their energy while they're, you know, in between worlds, to help facilitate them and help them move on. And you know, this doesn't necessarily mean they're gonna like pass away in the middle of your meditation or something. It might just mean that you provided a space for them to let go of whatever they were holding on to so that they could move just a little bit more forward in their process. I really feel like it's that simple. Really, it's just a visualization, a meditation. You're holding space essentially for these spirits if they choose to move on. And that's it. That's really it. But I do think it's a super helpful tool to have in your back pocket in case you do come across spirits that are like that. Again, though, you do not have to do any of these techniques. You can simply say, hey, no, that's not my responsibility. Leave me alone. Go somewhere else. And one thing I'll say with all of these techniques, make sure that you're calling in spirits of your highest and best good to assist you. You don't have to do this alone. You can call on angels, you could call on your spirit guides, you can even ask for certain spirit guides to come step in assisting you with this type of work, especially if you do it often. But just having help on that other side might be good, because you might not know all the ins and outs of how it works, and maybe there's somebody on that side that can help them cross over too. So if you like this video, please give it a like. It helps me a lot. And just know that I'm about to come out with a pick a card video that's going to be communicating with relatives. So if you're not subscribed, do so, and you'll be able to check out that video as soon as it comes out. So I'm curious, have you guys unintentionally helped a spirit cross? Like, I feel like intuitively you guys might have known these steps already and might have done this. But I'm curious to hear your stories of spirits that you've come across that might have needed help. Oh, quick note too, you guys, if you're watching this as it comes out, it's October. I've got a bunch of fun October videos coming out. And I also have a giveaway going on my Instagram and in my lives. I'm giving away some Astro Dice. So thank you so much for watching, you guys. I will see you in my next video. Bye.